Stay on.
What is up, everybody? Welcome in to another episode of The Cut. I am your host, Christian Williams, and I am here, as always, with Randy Hall. Randy, how are you, man?
Doing good. Going through some old boxes from old moves, trying to see what everything I got here before a big move. And but yeah, that's most of my day besides scouting offensive linemen to make sure there wasn't anyone I wanted to put at 5.
Yeah, I'm still bummed. I didn't get to watch one of the guys that I think may have slid into my interior offensive line list, but I don't know that for sure, so I can't be super disappointed. But yes, we are here to talk about offensive linemen, both interior and offensive tackle. I remember making fun of a certain website that called tackles exterior offensive linemen, and I almost just said it, so that would have been embarrassing. But yeah, tackles, guards, centers, all of the above in this episode. Normally we split this one up, but we are not this year. We are going to give our top 5 at each position and maybe do what we've done with the rest of our rankings episodes, which is talk about some guys past that. But also, we have a little bit of NFL news. The first item of news that we have not discussed is the Devontae Parker trade. So he was sent to the Patriots with a 2022 fifth-round pick for a 2023 third-round pick. Randy, as a Patriots fan, how are you feeling about this deal?
It's a weird one. For people freaking out about it being like a third-round pick, it's basically they value Devontae Parker as a fourth rounder. Let's just clear that up. Fourth and a fifth for a third, basically. So
yeah.
When you think about that, though, Amari Cooper got traded for fifth, right?
Fifth, yeah.
But Amari makes more money, so you got to incorporate all that as well. I do think it's a little bit of an overpay, personally, but I don't think it's anything like egregious. And you also have to remember they have to overpay anyways to get an actual valuable piece from a division rival. I think people forget that part as well. So I think it's a smart trade for the Patriots because they have bigger needs than wide receiver right now, and getting Parker at least allows you to kind of push off that first round pick for a wide receiver, because I do think they still need corner, linebacker. You could say edge rusher too, offensive line as well after dealing Shaq Mason, dealt Winovich. So you lost a lot of pieces. Linebackers are pretty slow, even if they are talented. And corners, you just lost a top 10 corner at worst in free agency, if not like top 5, top 3. So you have other holes. So I think this is a smart move from team building to get a vet that you think you could trust as long as he stays healthy.
Yeah, I think this locks in a defensive pick, personally. I think really you're kind of hitting the nail on the head.
Yeah, it would have to be like Green or Zion or like Linderbaum are the only ones I think like even considered on the offensive realm at this point.
Yeah. Way to spoil the rest of the show, dude. No, I'm just kidding. No, I also do think it is an overpay. I do wonder how Mac Jones and Devontae Parker will mesh, because Mac Jones is not someone who likes to throw into tight windows. He likes things to be fairly wide open, but you expect the second year jump where he will take more calculated risks, and you kind of hope that he would throw up some 50-50 balls to a guy who has been really reliable in catching those 50-50 balls over the course of his career. The big news, that was not the big news. The big news was the trade between the Philadelphia Eagles and the New Orleans Saints today. The Eagles got the 18th overall pick, a third-round pick this year, which is 101, a 7th-round pick this year, which is 237, a 2023 first, and a 2024 second for picks 16, 19, and a 6th-round pick, which is 194. Just overall thoughts, just start there, I guess.
I think it it shows that the Saints are really planning on getting key pieces in the first round of this draft, and the second round, because you got rid of your third, you got rid of your first next year, the second the year after that. So you got rid of a lot of assets that you would use to get a quarterback of the future. So that would suggest you're either getting a quarterback of the future with your one of your first 3 picks this year, or you believe in Winston enough for the next 2 years. So we'll see which one that is come draft day. I also think they have a dire need, in both of our opinion, I think the whole world's opinion, at left tackle and wide receiver. And both those positions the Chargers need. They need right tackle, not left tackle, but it's the same shit. And they need wide receiver depth. I mean, like they're a team that they're like one of those teams like, oh, if Jameson Williams fell there, that'd be great because he doesn't have to
Yeah,
really play for the first few months. But
right.
they are heavily rumored to draft a receiver as well, so this gets them ahead of the Chargers and get you another pick as well. So I in our group chat today with our friends, because Adam's in there. Obviously, we just had the Eagles fix episode a couple weeks ago, and we talked about stuff like this, and how this is a lot of cap to hit on 1 year with 3 first-round picks. So this was a lot of diversifying the portfolio, in my opinion and Adam's opinion, as well as getting future assets in case this just doesn't work out with Jalen Hurts. So you get a little bit of just backup in that scenario. But I said personally, I think I view this as like 2 different trades. So I view this as basically the 16th for the 18th and the 3 in the 101. And then I
Yep.
view it as the 19 for next year first, the second the year after that, and then a pick swap between the 6th and 7th round this year. So they kind of smashed 2 together here, which is kind of weird. So all the trades are always going to look a little unbalanced, or why'd you even do it kind of thing. But it's smart team building from the Eagles. I think there's a chance they could have gotten more if they didn't do this like it's 2 picks in 1 kind of situation, but maybe this is the only way the Saints would do it as well.
Yeah. I think it's a slam dunk by the Eagles
Yeah.
because not only do they keep, so I saw they had 5 picks in the top 100 before the trade, and now they have 5 picks in the top 101. So, and they also added
Yeah.
a first round pick in next year's draft, which is significant, especially when you look at what the state of the Saints is right now. I think that's a top half. I don't know that they make the playoffs. Granted, the NFC is kind of a shit show right now, so maybe they do. Maybe Jameis is fantastic for them and drags them back to the playoffs, although I think it'll probably be on the back of that defense. But this is a slam dunk for the Eagles because you are hedging your bet that Jalen Hurts is the guy while also keeping the resources to see if he is the guy. Howie Roseman is, as much as he gets shit on by Eagles fans, he has done a magnificent job ever since the Carson Wentz deal. Since then, I think that he has been one of the better GMs in the NFL, and I think this trade kind of shows that he's willing to take some risks. And I think giving up a first round pick in this year's class is a little risky, especially with what you can add on defense. But I think, to me, the question mark here is the Saints. So when you think about it as they gave up a first, a second, and a third for, call it, the 19, you can get a top ish quarterback for that. Like I just don't
Well, they
really.
tried. Remember, they
Yeah.
wanted a shot. So and I think cap comes into play with this as well. They actually have some cap room this year, so they can afford the 2 first-round picks. They are negative cap room next year already, like on the books. Obviously, if the cap increases, that goes down a bit, but they're already in the negative, and they've let go of a lot of people and restructured a lot of people. So I'm not sure there's much maneuverability past then. Um, So I think we have the money. Let's get the talent this year, maybe a quarterback of the future, and figure it out for the future next year with cheap money. Like
Yeah,
maybe this is possibly trying to see if you got someone that you can get out of Jameis's contract next year. Um, you only have Andy Dalton for a year, so it doesn't really matter. And you probably end up trading him to someone that loses their quarterback midseason, and it gives you more trade pieces. And honestly, they really kind of just need to get in front of the Chargers to best suit their rebuild for this year. And diversifying it this way, you get cheaper on the books next year without having that first. Um, it's not like a great trade, but I think it's a very smart trade. Like I don't think this is an amazing trade for either team, but I think it's smart from both teams' perspectives of what they're trying to do team building wise right now. And Eagles, they don't need 3 first round picks. I would rather have 2 first round picks back to back years than 3 first round picks one year.
yeah,
This is smart team building for them. And if they have to trade up for a quarterback next year, they now have 2 firsts and a future second that are just free to dangle around.
yeah. Yeah, again, fantastic work by the Eagles. Remember, they do still have the 15th pick, so they still have two firsts,
Yeah,
as you alluded
they
to.
still have the pick of the litter from all these things,
Yeah,
especially at
which,
wide receiver.
yeah, which is I don't know that that's where they go. Last thing on this, and I know we're doing so. The Friday fix this week will be on the Saints,
Yep.
but your initial instinct, what are the two picks that the Saints will make, or will they package that to get a quarterback?
I think I think there's a good chance the board's going to fall to where 2 of the big 5 receivers are left, and then maybe Charles Cross or Trevor Penning falls to 16. I think they take the actual offensive lineman and hope to get receiver the next pick or take a quarterback with that next pick. I think there is an outside chance they are looking to move 16 and 19 to go up to get a quarterback as well.
Okay, that's yeah. I don't
It's
know where I'm
silly,
landing.
but it's
Yeah.
silly, but there's an outside chance that that's possible.
Yeah, for sure. All right, that's all the news we have. So let's just dive right into our offensive lineman rankings for the 2022 NFL draft class. This is always a fun episode. We tend to argue a little bit on these ones, but ironically, we have very, very similar lists this year compared to last year, I think, where we were a little all over the place. I was lower on Slater at the time that we recorded, and then I got more tape, and then I wasn't
and
anymore.
and much higher on Smith.
Yeah, yeah, this is true. All right, so we're going to start with our interior offensive linemen, and we have the same top five. So we are just going to
Yes.
go in order. We'll go 5-1 on these ones, because I think everyone kind of knows who the top three are. So, Randy, who is R5?
R5 is Jamari Sailor, I believe is the pronunciation.
Sawyer. Sawyer.
Salier. See, it's so weird.
Yeah.
um, but he is a guard from Georgia. Honestly, he's very, very talented. I believe you have him. Yeah, you have him actually graded higher than me, which is hilarious when we get to the top here.
Yeah.
I think he's talented. I do have him, I believe it's a 3rd round grade on our scale. So it's nothing like fantastic. I do think he probably goes. I think there's a chance he goes in the second. I do think it's no doubt he goes day 2. Um, for me, I think he's very, very good pass block, especially for a guard. Like good enough to where I think if he absolutely had to take a rotational snaps at tackle, he could easily do it. Like as a swing spot tackle, not starting tackle. I don't think that's in his future, but he is mobile for his size. I mean, 6'4", 325 isn't like the biggest lineman ever, but it's still pretty big. But and
Yeah.
especially, I'm actually quite surprised with his lateral mobility on tape when we get the RAS grade of like a 4. When you see actually how well he does in that part of the game, it's kind of amazing to see actually. But he is a good finisher. He's very tenacious, and like I said, he's pretty good in the passing game. So his hands and anchor are relatively good. But yes, I do have him as being like a 3rd round grade, and not much higher than the guy right behind him or the guy right behind him either. But he is very talented.
Yeah, so Sawyer, a little bit of background. He had a lot of starts at left tackle this year for
Yeah.
Georgia, and while
I tried not to watch those, honestly. Like,
yeah,
because
and
I'm grading him as a guard, so I tried to.
yeah, well, that's actually where I solidified that I wanted to grade him as a guard because
Mhm.
while I
I did
think he
watch
has
him. It's just
right, well, I think he has good lateral mobility in the run game. I think his footwork in pass pro at tackle is just not quick enough. He just does not have the ability to set an edge and get out wide against speed rushers. And I think obviously in the NFL that is pretty much what you're looking at. It's kind of the era of speed rushers. I think we see that with how people are ranking this edge class, which by the way, can't wait for that episode. It's been a long time due, but um, yeah, Sawyer overall, I think profiles best as a just a mauler. I think you kick him into left guard, or I think he can play either side. Um, but I do think that he's going to hold his own in pass blocking as well because he does have that tackle experience. Um, I'd love to see a little more balance as he is headhunting. I think he can get a little bit off balance in when he is run blocking, but Georgia has a very unique running scheme, and it you actually even from his tackle film, you would see him pulling a little bit, and it was kind of fun to watch. So he's a good player. I'm actually shocked. So I really am a fan. So I'll give my 6 and 7. I'm a fan of Lacita Smith, and I'm a fan of Marquise Hayes. But for whatever reason, Sawyer actually graded higher for me. Um, so I guess trust the process, trust the grading scale, right?
trust the process. Exactly.
All right. Any parting thoughts on Jamari Sawyer?
No. The only thing I would say is he's quickly risen up my board. He's a guy that I thought would be like go to this process. Most places had him as like a day three guy, easy. And the more we've watched him, I've grown way more comfortable with taking him in the third round.
Yeah. And I did not say, but he is a back end two for me. So
Yeah.
I'm not far off there, but I am a
No,
little.
and I will say I'm like 1.5 away from being a back end too, so it's not like it's like rudely a third, but like he's still a third.
Right, right. Okay, who is R4?
All right, Dylan Parham. I do believe you have him higher. Do I have him higher? I try to know which one of us actually likes him better before I talk. You actually technically have him slightly higher than me, I believe. But for me, he is a guy that's kind of a freak athlete for the position. He played linebacker and tight end in high school. Came to Memphis to be tight end. He did sprints and like hurdles and high jumps in high school. Like, I don't understand how he bulked up hard to become a guard and tackle at Memphis. I obviously think he's a guard. He does have some height concerns for the NFL, at least the old style way, to where he's going to possibly be looked at as a center by some teams. I don't really think that's the case, especially because he's not really done it. So I wouldn't draft him as to be a developmental center for me. I would draft him to be a guard with possibility to play him at center if it's the best fit. So that's usually how I go. But like I said, he's a great athlete for the position. 8.74 in the RAS. I gave him an 8.5 for lateral mobility. He does move very, very well for a big guy. And it's just for me, there's a lot of like functional strength things that he just has to continue to bulk up for. I don't think his body's done transitioning to being an offensive lineman. So I think he just needs to get a little bit more um, functional strength and mass. And for me, like I don't have his strength is poorly graded, but I think it shows the most on tape for his anchor. And I don't know about you personally if that's the same way, but um, that's just where I have it for him. But he does show good hands, good tenacity in the running game. I do have running game as his best blocking quality as well. And he's decent in the passing set, mainly because he's just a good athlete. So he does a very good job just moving around, getting his feet in the right place. I think technique wise, he's done a really good job in the transition. I'm actually very surprised how quickly he's kind of gotten to this point. So it's a lot of good work for him, but still needs to finish the work in the weight room. But anchor and I have balance are his two worst traits for me.
Yeah. I am very similar in that aspect, but the anchor stuff, I get hung up on it because if he's struggling to anchor in the SEC, granted, a lot of the guys he's playing are NFL guys, but I do worry what that's going to look like next year. And a lot of people have pushed back. I've said, Parham to me is a second round player. I think I would take him top 50. I don't know if he landed inside my top 50. I actually think he may be just outside, but I would be okay taking him in the top 50 outside of, some of these other guards that we'll talk about. And we did have a clerical error here. I do want to talk about Lacita Smith because he's actually my five. I didn't realize that I didn't
Listen,
update the
it's not
RAS to
my
Sawyer.
job to rearrange your
I
shit.
know. You're right. You're right. So I'll talk about him in a second, but Parham overall, I think that technique and being, new to the position and having such good technique gives me hope that he can continue, like you said, working his body and improving that anchor because once you fix that anchor, you have got a quality starting guard
Yeah,
at the NFL level.
yeah. Honestly, so like him especially, it's literally just the if for. I think a lot of the balance issues, balance and anchor issues, does come from the functional strength. So, and it's because he's a little bit light for the position as well. He's like 310, so a little bit light is kind of rude. Like he needs like 10 more pounds of muscle, 10, 15,
Yeah.
which he'll easily do over this first season, in my opinion. So I think he's there. He just needs a good nutritionist and strength coach, and then just a decent offensive line coach, because I don't think Memphis is known for having this incredible offensive line coach, but just how quickly he's grown, that guy probably needs a new position. 'Cause that guy
Yeah.
needs a raise. Like, good lord.
Well, and I think too, I think their running scheme definitely helps because it gives Parham a look at what his best fit will be at the NFL level. I think a zone blocking scheme where he can get out and move a
Yeah,
little bit.
for sure.
I think that is what you're looking at as his best fit. I think a team like the 49ers should be in love with this guy. They do need some offensive line help. There's so many teams that run outside zone primarily outside zone schemes, and so a lot of teams would be good fits for him. But he's a guy I really like. I'm gonna jump back to Lacita Smith. So I echo all of that stuff for Sawyer. I just didn't update his athletic score in the scale, and so he falls
Oh,
1 point behind Lacita
yeah.
Smith. So Lacita Smith, uh, a fifth year senior from Virginia Tech. I think he took his COVID year. Pretty good athlete, 6.91 RAS. The main takeaway from Lasitas is that he is tenacious. He is nasty. He reminds me of like a smaller Ike Mekwanu, who we'll talk about here in a little bit, with a little less technique. And honestly, he's a little older, so that's a little more worrisome. But another guy that I think moves really well for a player his size. I think his pass blocking is actually pretty solid. I think his anchor isn't fantastic, but I think that he does show good technique, good footwork when he is in pass blocking situations. I think you're a little lower on him for that aspect. And then I
For pass blocking,
yes. Are you the same?
I have an 8.
Okay. Yeah. So I gave him an 8.5 in pass blocking. The one thing I did say about him, and I actually knocked him for it, is I think he's a little lazy in the run game because I think he has the ability, but he does not flip his hips when. So they run a they had a very diverse scheme at Virginia Tech, but when he was trying to set an edge or set set his runners up to take an outside lane, he failed to get his hips around, and then he loses leverage, and I think that's a problem for him. I think you're looking at that just being a coaching thing, though. So Lacita Smith, good player. I think I have him with a round 2 grade. I am gonna double check that.
Yeah, he's round three for me. His lowest things for me is run blocking. I have a 6.5, and I have lateral mobility at 6. Um, I think like I just don't confidently see him pulling to a 3 tech every single play. So I do think he's a little bit scheme dependent, just because of that. So that's why he's a little bit lower for me. And I think the lateral mobility is honestly one of the biggest reasons why his run blocking is a little lower. Because, like you said, they do run so many, they have a very diverse scheme. And it felt like there was like a third of the plays where he just was not even a viable option to play if he was
Yeah.
pulling. It was really weird. Not that he can't pull. I'm not like trying to dog him completely like that, but like he's just I don't know. Like you said, you don't know if it's the coaching or if it's lazy or if it's just technique or he's just not he just doesn't have a good first step on the pull. All little things like that could be fixed. Hopefully efforts a little thing, but yeah,
Yeah.
I do have him just barely behind Sailor. So, like you said, if I had pass block at 8.5, you'd actually be ahead of him. So it is very close.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's kind of a tier break for me, and then Parham hops up to a next tier, and then he's kind of right there with my interior offensive lineman 3, who is also yours, who is Kenyon Green. Talk to me about Kenyon Green.
Yeah, tenacity.
Yep.
There's the argument right there for Kenyon Green. He did not test as well of an athlete as we were hoping for. I'm not saying like we had like a 10 grade from or nothing going into it, but I think we had like a 7. He ended up with just under a 6, so it did really hurt his rankings a little bit here, but he shows really good lateral mobility. We've seen him be able to play guard and tackle, although I do think continuing just to work at one position is going to be the biggest thing for him, and I do think that should be guard just personally, but he has flipped around a good amount, and I think it has stunted his growth. I have talked about on here before how flopping positions a lot does really screw with a lot of things. So that's why it's a very skilled position to be a swing player on the bench for a team. It does sound crazy to think of that as just a bench player being really skilled, but it is a big talent to have to be able to consistently play on both sides of the line and have your footwork completely on the money. But he does show good lateral mobility, good balance. He's relatively strong. I don't think he's as strong as you would hope, like to be like the dominant first round player. I do think he needs to work on a little bit of functional strength. Um, Pass blocking, I do have it as well above average as a 7.5, but nothing like spectacular. I never really saw like spectacular reps at guard or tackle with passing. I did see some good stuff, obviously, but there's definitely some technique issues there that he definitely needs to work on. But footwork, at least for the most part, I think was usually in the right spot. But he did overextend a good amount, and he did lose on some outside shoulder stuff with that as well. So, but like I said, with the tenacity and everything, I do think even though I don't think, like I said, he's not the most strength that you would want from this top kind of position, I do think he presents a good anchor. Actually, the best of the top 3 for me. And I think a lot of ironically, the moving around, I think helped that more than anything. I think it's the only thing that really was helped in this aspect of all the swapping. But tenacity and run blocking are his highest grades for me. And he's really good getting his latches on and getting the hands on. The working with it in the passing game where that kind of on and off and continual punch and moving, make sure you're not grabbing too much because passing game means holding. Uh, I think there's stuff like that he needs to work on slightly, but I still gave him a really good grade for that. I do have him as a top end second round pick, I believe. I think he's literally like 0.15 away from being a first round grade for me. So it is very, very close.
Yeah. I also have him as a second. Do you think he's carrying bad weight? Because
So I see what I know what you're saying because like I literally just preached about the strength thing. It's weird that I think he should be 325, but he needs to transform 10 pounds into muscle.
I
I think
think that
325 is a smart playing weight. Maybe 320. Who gives a shit at that point? But he does need to transform his body slightly.
so here's the thing. Like, do you remember not that not that he is this player, but
Yeah, we're
Joe
not talking.
Thomas. Yeah, so Joe Thomas coming out of Wisconsin looked like Kenyon Green in that like he was a thick, thick boy. And Joe Thomas was a thick boy throughout his entire career with the Browns, but the way he moved that weight around to become just an obviously a Hall of Fame level left tackle was something that I think Kenyon Green could take note of. I think that bad weight really showed up at the combine, and I was kind of bummed
Yeah,
about it. He couldn't move around. He was not doing well in the drills, and I think that a lot of that stemmed from that. Just it's like he has heavy feet when he's doing things like that, but I don't think he has heavy feet necessarily when he's on the field, especially when he's a guard. I think you could see it a little bit at tackle though.
like you said, he doesn't present heavy feet when he's not trying to use strength.
Right.
So when he's using technique and he's just moving laterally or just moving along with tenacity and aggression, it's perfect almost.
Right.
Where it becomes it's hard to describe, but there's like sometimes there's a little tick in your head where it becomes a strength test, and that's where you see a lot of stalemates on the line of scrimmage. Is it's just two guys trying to root each other out, and usually doesn't work. That's why you get two very large men not moving, looking like they're hugging, because they are literally trying to basically lift each other up, and it just won't fucking work. And I think that's where, like you said, he gets his feet are in the mud, and it's when he's trying to make up for the strength and or like basically prove he's strong enough to just one shot push this guy out of the way. When even if you are, most of the time you can't. It's footwork is the name of the game for offensive line, but functional strength is key. But you have to have both, or else stuff like that is going to continue to happen. And I did see those plays, and that's why honestly those were the plays where the strength dipped for me
Yeah.
in the grading.
Yeah, and I was bummed that he wasn't as athletic because I mean, Kenyon Green at one point was my interior offensive lineman one. I was
Yeah,
very bullish
sweet.
on him, and I think his upside is that. Like, I think he could become that. I just think he has a little further to go than I thought. So, all right, let's move on to our interior offensive lineman two, and this is really the first time we're talking about a center. Obviously, Tyler Linderbaum was widely regarded as like a top 10 guy when this process first started. He has since fallen a little bit just with positional value and just kind of how the real draft board is looking in terms of all the teams at the top half of the draft. But talk to me about Tyler Linderbaum. What makes him a first round player? We both have him as that
He's the best center in the draft.
by
Uh,
a lot, in my
he
opinion.
is very, very talented at the position. Where he is falling for a lot of people is there's a lack of like positional flexibility for Tyler. I have no doubt that he could play guard. It's just I don't think he could play guard at a high level at what his current skill set is. Um, but
And just no weight.
he's a high level center. So like
Right.
there's some guys that can be center, can be guard. Like last year with Landon Dickerson, we both think he's a really good center. Uh, the Eagles took him to be the replacement for Kelsey, and he struggled at guard early, but he kind of came on down the stretch because he is like 6'5", 320, where Linderbaum's 6'3", 290. You could see there's kind of a decent difference there for that reason. So a lot of his problems literally just become uh, he's not this versatile interior offensive lineman. Uh, and for me, that's kind of silly. Uh, like I get if you want to knock the athleticism down, which we did. I get you might schematically you don't pick him if you're like the Eagles picking him. I do think it's a very weird thing, and I don't know why Eagles fans really want that. Just because you picked Landon last year and it kind of worked out for him playing guard, I think you pick a guard and let Landon become center once Kelsey is retired. Uh, but getting to Linderbaum's actual talents, he's very, very tenacious in the run game. I have him tied for second behind Kenyon Green in that category. He shows very, very good lateral mobility. He can get to any position from the center. Obviously snapping the ball gives you some sort of advantage fired out the ball, but it also gives you a lot of disadvantages. So I think he correctly correlates everything into the right spot, and I think he fires up the ball maybe the best of the class, like in the running game. It's at least up there. So he is very, very dominant in the run game. He does show amazing balance from the center position, which is so key. Just to make sure you don't get knocked the fuck back, by the way, when you're snapping up like that from that position. So I do have him as the best balance of the center class. And I do think that is very, very, of the interior offensive line class. I do think that's very important. He shows really good reps in the passing game as well. Honestly, shows great latches. Uh, he absolutely dominates one-on-one blocks uh, with a regular basis in the passing game. So that's very, very good, especially from a position where you don't really have a lot of one-on-one blocks. So if you're dominating a lot of one-on-one blocks and you're tag teaming two different guys at the same time, you're going to do a lot of good things. And that's really key when you're thinking of a lot of A gap blitzes, which is a key feature of the NFL defense. So I think he projects as a very, very high level center. And any team that needs a center is going to be absolutely salivating for this guy. I just don't know where he lands, and that's the problem. Um, a lot of people, especially this last season, we had so many injuries across the league. There's so many tackles and guards that rotated in the center and gave decent snaps. I don't know if center's being faulted up the board like it was kind of last year, as we saw, Josh Myers probably being picked a little bit too high and Landon being picked arguably too high with the injury history. And then the best center of the class kind of falling later with Creed Humphrey. Uh,
So stupid. That made no
well,
sense.
let's be honest. Landon Dickerson had the best tape of the class. But intangible wise, it wasn't the best. It's just some
Right.
of his, and that's not the whole tape, but the best tape was Landon. Because,
It's fair.
not every game was that, but he had the
I
best one.
I could argue though that Creed, if you combined, and we talked about this last year, if you combined his 2019 and his 2020 film, then you get the best tape.
Yes,
But you
agreed,
had
and
to
I
do
think that's
that
what
to
we
get,
seen on the field
yeah,
as well. But you got to remember, Landon didn't get to play the whole time either. So,
that's true.
what Linderbaum does struggle with slightly, getting back to that athleticism, we do have that lower. Obviously, he does not have an RAS grade right now because he hasn't done anything, so except measured. But I do think he does need to get a little bit more functional strength, as we see in the weight, only being 290. I think he needs to get another pack on a little bit of muscle here, and so strength and anchor is where I do have him the lowest, and those correlate completely. Those are literally the knocks on his anchor are his strength.
Yeah. I I think Linderbaum, kind of going back to Parham, I think Linderbaum in a wide zone scheme is going to be he's going to look like the best center in this class. I think there's a world where you put him in a gap scheme and that strength and that anchor, and he's really good in the run game, but I think putting him in a gap scheme against NFL level talent at that size may be problematic. I think he can do it. I just don't think that that's the best fit for him. And
Yeah,
I feel like I said, most teams are incorporating some type of zone one way or another. It's not like zone blocking teams are only running zone blocking plays. That's just not how it goes.
yeah,
He's going to have to be able to block in a gap scheme, and he does a good job of it right now. But that was at Iowa. That was in the Big Ten, and so I do
100%.
question that. I think you might want to. I think he's got to put on some weight. I
He
really
does.
do. Um,
He
but
does.
he's a fantastic prospect. He's a first round guy. I
Yeah, yeah. He's first round for both of us. I mean, honestly, like a wide zone clearly his the most ideal fit. I would say like play action teams. I think would be great for him. Because of the pass blocking ability in a one-on-one set. And the
yeah
other thing we don't get to talk about with the other positions on the interior offensive line, he shows really good leadership and blocking
Yes.
scheme setup ability, which is, there's other centers in this class that like Lindstrom, like he's not in the same category in that department. He's just not. He'll get there possibly, but like right now, Linderbaum can legitimately step on a field and direct the entire blocking scheme.
Yeah.
It's the same thing I talked about last year with Josh Myers and why I thought he was going to get vaulted up the board, not as high as he did, but I thought he was
Right.
going up the board because he literally, y- you could have, if you have good guards next to him, it, he's literally dominating because
He's
he
the
can.
second quarterback
Yeah, he
out there.
dictates everything. He's gonna have everyone in the perfect position. And while he's not a perfect blocker or anything, he's gonna be good enough helping out. Linderbaum's the same way, but can do the blocking. So
Right.
that's why I have him graded very, very highly. I do think he'd be fun in some screen game as well, like a screen heavy team. I think he would kind of dominate in that as well.
Oh yeah. All right, let's get to our one, and then I do want to touch on a couple of the guys that I graded. I think you got to quite a few as well, but we need to talk about Zion Johnson, who has
The
seen
best.
his stock rise just dramatically over the last 3 to 4 months. I think people aren't watching Boston College during the year most of the time, unless you're a Debbie Nut and you were watching Zay Flowers. There was really nothing appealing about the Boston College team. However, Zion Johnson was a bright spot. I'll kick it off with him because I was a little lower on him. I started out the process with a high end second on him. I didn't think that he was the level of athlete that he is. I actually, like on film, I don't think he's as athletic as he actually tested. He has a 9.74. Is that correct? Is that updated? Uh,
I believe so.
yeah, well, I'm a loser and I didn't update all of them. So 9.74 relative athletic score, just a fantastic athlete. He tested out of this world at the combine. But the overall tape is really good as well. I think he moves really well. This is a so Zion Johnson is the one guy that I think is very scheme versatile. If you need him to be a pulling guard, he can be that. If you need him to play center, I think he's going to suck compared to what he would be at guard, but I think he can do it. If you need him to just run a power blocking scheme, I think he can do that. He's a really strong guy. He's fairly tenacious. He's not Kenyon Green level. I wouldn't even say he's Linderbaum level, but I do think that he is a little nasty out there. I think if I had to pick one area where in the run game that I want him to improve on, though, it's finishing those blocks. I know that's not one of the things we grade for interior offensive linemen, but I think that that is a good measuring stick for tenacity is can you drive someone into the ground? He does it, just not as often as I would like. And then I do think that his pass blocking and his anchor could use a little bit of improvement. That's where I do uh, think that I think his footwork is good. I think he sets up a decently wide base, but I think he gets a little too wide, and I think you're able to drive him back in certain aspects. So I think that's his one area. And then overall, I actually have him pretty low in hand placement and punch, and I think that I have him at 7, so it's still above average. But like compared to these other guys that we just talked about, uh, I think that his hands could get a little wide at times, and I think that in and of course, I just talked about pass blocking being the area of improvement. I think it's mostly in pass blocking. I think when he's seeking in the run game, I think he is pretty good. He does have pretty strong hands. But what do you think of Zion?
Uh, he's fantastic. I love Zion's tape. He is. I know he's viewed as kind of positional, versatile. Like you said, I think he could play center. He wouldn't be as good as guard, but he could play it. I know he did play one season at tackle, so there's a lot of talk of him being like a positional tackle in the NFL. I don't really see that necessarily. I think he's a little bit undersized, um, just for like his skill set at in the passing game. Like I think he would need a little bit more work there to be a tackle, but ladder mobility, tied for best in the class for me. I do agree. His anchor and balance are his and hands are the worst grade for me. They're all 7.5, so it's still great grades. But it is like those are all correlated for me. So I think like the anchor has a lot of screwed up times. Like you said, he gets wide base, he's off balance. His arms are wide, so he's not correcting from the wide base to where he's not getting more leverage on the inside. He's still out wide everywhere, so it looks like he's trying to hug. So it's a lot of things like that in the passing game, personally, where he needs to improve. I do have him as a good pass blocker because the feet are great, especially for a guard. So we saw a lot
Yeah.
of things there that are really, really good. I just think he needs a little bit of balance, and anchor and hand placement work, but that's very, very doable, very, very coachable. So I think he's going to be an easy first round pick. He's first round grade for me. He's probably going to be might be a top 20 player for me, top 10. I have no idea where he's going to end up falling, but best grades being lateral mobility and run blocking for me. So
Yeah.
he's just
I love
talented.
it. Yeah, there's not a whole lot to say about him. He's very, very good. Some guys that we didn't talk about that I did want to touch on: Ed Ingram, off-field concerns
Just
that
don't
we're
get
not
him.
going to touch on. What I will say though is if we removed those entirely, he'd be a top 5 interior
Yeah,
offensive lineman. He'd be my
5.
5. He'd be your 5. Fantastic. So Ed Ingram, good player. We'll see if he can, not do the things that he allegedly did. Cam Jurgens, did you study Jurgens?
Um, I don't believe so because I didn't put his athletic grade in. So
Okay, fair. So Cam Jurgens is getting a lot of buzz. He has a lot of plays where they're highlight plays for offensive linemen. Your highlight plays are you throwing people around. The snap to snap consistency is not there. People are talking about him as a day 2 pick. I do not see that whatsoever. I see a day 3 developmental guy. I think he probably fits best at guard, even though he played center at Nebraska. Interesting dude, incredibly athletic. I think, let me see, his RAS is 9.57. So I think he's third highest. And then the other one I wanted to talk about, did you see any Cole Strange film?
oh, of course.
Okay. What did you think of him?
I think he's very, very good. Um, but he has issues. Pass blocking being the name. He is a freak athlete, clearly, scoring almost a 10. But I don't like he's basically his best things for me is tenacity at 7.5, and then pretty much everything else is like a 6, 6.5, 5.5. I don't know if
Okay.
that correlates with what you did. I do have him at, I believe, 7, 8, 9, 10. He's 11 for me, in interior offensive lineman.
Okay.
I did think the athleticism grade would kind of shoot him up higher than it was, but and he's not far behind the other guys. It's just he needs a lot of work, in my opinion. I don't think he could play day one,
Yeah.
especially because of the passing game stuff. It really bugged me. Clearly,
Yes. And I think we saw a lot of that at the Senior Bowl too, but I have
yes.
his strength rating at 4. I don't think he's strong
No,
enough
I'd
to
have
play
that.
right
I,
now.
I, I am at 6. I get what you did though. I really
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. Well, I looked at like I gave Cam Jurgens a 6 in strength, and I think he's significantly stronger than Cole Strange right now. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. Any other guys you want to talk about before we move to tackle?
I'll just quickly 6.
Yeah,
Lacata
let's see
Smith.
this. Yeah.
Lacita Smith, thank you. Alec Lindstrom 7, Darian Kennard 8, Ed Ingram 9, Marquise Hayes, who we didn't get to go over, is 10, Cole Strings, Thayer Mumford, and Donovan West round out my interior offensive line. Lindstrom a lot higher than I thought he'd be. Um,
Dude,
just
yeah.
looking at like what I was told about him and everything, I do have him. I believe he's a third round grade. He's pretty good in the passing game. Like for a center, I thought he was relatively good. He does have some anchor concerns and some strength concerns, balance concerns, because he is, 6'3", 298. But he's a better athlete than I thought as well. So he's risen up my board a good amount. He's, I would say, like confidently center 2 because most of these guys
Oh,
aren't confidently centers.
right.
I do think he is a center. So I think he's center two for me. So I do think he's going to be a steal. Most places still have him as a day three prospect. So if he actually does fall to day three, I think someone's going to get a quality player, maybe a guy that does need a little bit of seasoning and a little bit more functional strength. But I think he could play this year, at least in like a setup like Josh Myers did, where he had the guards around him to make up for some of his deficiencies in that area.
Yeah, I echo all of that. I was very shocked to see where he
Right?
graded out. I actually had to go back and look. I was like, did I do something wrong here? Am I wrong? But no, I'm sticking by it, and I'm glad that you feel the same
Yeah.
because I trust your evaluations, and that's why those lists
Oh,
are the same. All right, let's get over to tackles since we're kind of running out of time as usual. This is what we do. We run out of time all the time. So we have different lists here, correct?
yeah. Decent,
We
pretty
do.
different. Four is the only one that's the same.
Okay, so we'll go 5 to 1 the same way we just did, and you can start with your five. Who's your
How
five?
rude. Bernard Raymond is my five. Athletic freak
Hmm.
from Central Michigan, 6'6", 305. So he's got the ideal height, maybe not the ideal weight necessarily, but he doesn't show weight concerns in the running game, and I think tenacity is the biggest part of that. He does need a little bit seasoning in the finishing aspect. I do think I think he drives out the blocks and then just gets kind of off it after the 2 yards. So I'd like to see a little bit better stuff in that. Where he does need the seasoning would be in the passing game. I think that's where his footwork needs improvement a lot. I do have it as a six there. I have his passing as a seven, pass blocking, but anchor and hands and footwork all at sixes, and that's what drives him down the board for me. I do have him as a back end second round pick, but he's a very fun prospect to watch, just because of what this kind of offense does. It's he gets to do a lot of quick game and it's when he's asked to do these like 5 step drops is where you see a lot of his deficiencies as a tackle.
Yeah. For what it's worth, I have him as a high end three. He is my tackle eight, though.
Yeah,
I so it's important to know he transitioned from tight end
yeah,
during COVID. So
yeah,
like it's the you can see why NFL teams are like obsessed with this kid because he has already made so many strides. It's just he's still so much of a project, and I mean he's been playing. He's a senior. He was at the Senior Bowl,
yeah.
and so a project senior is
But
a lot less
Project
concerning
C,
for tackles.
yeah, it's a little bit less like endearing when you're a project senior. As I know
Yes.
personally. But the 305 I think does a lot of like the issues with the functional strength stuff. I think if he can put on 10 pounds of muscle, um, he can really do a lot better in every aspect, especially the muscle, because that'll help. With him, the hands and everything, he can get the latches on and just move you, especially in the running game, easy. For him, it's just placement and consistency. Especially in the passing game, a lot of his like punches do get worked off a lot, especially by some speed rush. So he basically just needs to continue the transition to being a tackle. Uh, but besides that, like what he's a guy that I think is going to get drafted in round two, deservedly so. Um, but maybe like he's a good fit for a team like the Steelers if they could trade up to get him maybe in the second. Um, because he doesn't have to start day one because you have functional starters to tackle. But I think he could beat them out.
And I think back to the Colton Miller selection, and I think he's probably going to be a first round pick. There's a piece of me
Ooh.
I haven't
Well,
mocked him there in
I'll
a
tell you
long
what.
time.
It took like 3 or 4 years for Colton Miller to do anything to really feel like
Exactly.
he was worth that pick. So
Well, and I think maybe teams will look at that too. But yeah, I like Raymond. I just think he's much more of a project than what
he's
mainstream
rough.
media has led people to believe too. I think a lot of people have framed him as ready, and I don't think he can play unless so there's a piece of me that thinks that he could just transition to guard to start his career and then continue learning tackle. But like you've said, that's tough. That's really tough to do. So
Yeah, I will say for me, he's a point and a half above your 5, and then, like, half a point above the next guy and, like, a point above the guy behind him. So it's very close in this area. I think it is a tier here. Um, Actually, he's a lot bigger. He's 2 points ahead of your 5. I thought yours was Lucas. So he's 2.5 above yours for me, but that's because of a different reason. So
Yeah.
we'll get into your 5.
Yeah, so my tackle 5 is Tyler Smith out of Tulsa. He's a redshirt sophomore, 6'4", 330-ish. I don't know what he's at. 8.76 RAS, so really athletic dude. He's a guy. The problem with Tyler Smith is I do see why everyone wants to label him as a guard, because I think his best best trait would be his tenacity and his just fire when he's playing. And I think you can even see that in his pass sets. I think that also gets him into trouble in his pass sets. I think he can be a little inconsistent with his footwork. He's very, very raw, but he is incredibly strong for someone his size. Uh, I think in run blocking, I think you toss him on the left side, whether it's at guard or tackle, and you say, "All right, sweet, like we can run that way," because I think that he's that good. I so right now my biggest knock is pass blocking. I have a 6, footwork I have a 6, and hands and punch I have a 6.5. And the reason I have it that low is because I think his placement can get a little rough. I think he's got a really strong punch, though. I think he can knock someone back with it. So that's exciting. I like him. I think there's a world where I regrade him as a guard and see what that looks like.
A 5 easy.
Yeah. But right now he's my tackle 5, and I think I'd try him. The reason I graded him here is I would try him at tackle, and if it doesn't work, you have guard to fall back on because I think he can kick inside fairly easily.
See, he's literally the same body type and mold of Quentin Nelson, and he got drafted very, very early. And this is not a comp or anything, but I mean, Quentin Nelson, I believe, 6'5", 330. So, heh,
Yep.
it's that.
Right.
And when he got drafted so early, people are like, "Why would you draft your guard that early? Are you going to move him to tackle because you drafted him this early?" He's the best guard in football. Plain and simple. So, not that Tyler Smith would walk in the door like Quentin did and be the best guard in football, but I think he's just more talented there. I don't think he's ready to play NFL tackle.
Yeah.
Plain and
That's
simple.
fair.
That's why he's lower for me. Plain and simple.
That's fair. All right, we do have the same 4, so let's talk about Trevor Penning. What did you see out of him?
Uh, Senior Bowl encapsulated at best tenacity, tenacity, tenacity. Among the best in the class at tenacity and finishing. The only one I have higher is Icky. That's it, and I think that's fair. And that's why Icky's above him. But technique is where he uh, has a deficit. So he is the tenacity king and technique average. He's got above average footwork, uh, above average overall in the passing game. I think he's got a decent anchor at 7.5 for me. His hands are lackluster in the passing game at best. In the running game, they're dominant. So I did give him 6.5. So I was trying to give a little leeway there, but his placement and punches in the passing game are often misplaced or just missed. Uh, and again, we saw all these great clips from the Senior Bowl, but you also didn't see the rep before where he didn't look like he had a left arm or a right arm, depending on the side that they rushed, because for some reason he punched directly in front of him, and the defender was already at his shoulder. So he struggles at times with that, and it really bugs me. And I think his worst trait overall is balance. And again, the tenacity and finishing, he's trying to headhunt.
Yeah.
And I think he needs reined in a bit. And that's why I do think while he did play left tackle, I think with that kind of mentality, you have to have the right coaching to play left tackle with that kind of mentality, and we'll see where he lands. I do think maybe a switch to right tackle might be a smart move, just in the long haul to get him like a little bit under control without having to be the blindside guy, because he is going to miss some blocks.
Yeah.
In the passing game, plain and simple.
Yeah. So I think I agree with all of that. So I think he anchors really well, but I also think that if you straight arm him and you have a lengthy guy, I shouldn't be saying this about a 6'7" dude with long arms, but, like, I
Right.
think that that's how you can win against him because he overcommits. He gets very top heavy, and so if you straight arm him, he's gonna try to counter it, and then the rusher's by him already, and that's where his footwork gets pretty rough too. Like, his recovery is not what you would like to see, um, and when defenders disengage from him, he is all sorts of messed up,
It,
but go
I was
ahead.
gonna say, basically, to break that down, if he does not improve his passing game, Tape will be his enemy because we saw at the Senior Bowl with Smith from Ohio State. Half the clips that everyone saw of Penning were of going against Smith. Those were very early in the drill. If you
Yeah.
watch the later part of the drill, Smith had his number because he figured him out, and it only took 4 or 5 reps for him to figure it out. So Tape, if he does not improve, will be his enemy. However, give him shit. I do think he'll improve. I do think he'll be a very, very functional starting left or right tackle in the NFL.
Yeah.
I do have him as a higher end second round grade. So, you know, it does bake in a little bit of the risk of starting him day one in the passing game.
Yeah. I have him mid round 2. So, um
Power
all
run
right.
scheme, please.
What's that?
Power run scheme, please, for
Oh
him.
yeah, has to be, has to be. All right. Who is your 3?
Charles Cross, who is your two? Two.
Unfortunately. I was a big
Uh,
Charles Cross OT1 guy, but
Yeah, I thought you had him as the one for
I
even you
did.
had to correct me last week for this. I do think he will be a starting left tackle in the NFL. And if he goes to a team like the Chargers, if he falls all that way, which would probably be the farthest I could see him falling, he'll be a starting right tackle and be perfectly capable of that. He's a relatively good athlete, just over 7.5 in the RAS. Very, very good in the running game, equally as good in the passing game. I think he's a very, very balanced prospect. Shows really good tenacity, shows good finishing as well. Overall, just a very, very good prospect. Clearly a first round talent. Um, just plain and simple. I just want to put that out there. He does not really have a flaw. Like I don't have any average grades for him. My lowest grades footwork at 7. I just think he needs a little bit more time, and he is a redshirt sophomore, so he will get that time. I do think after a year or so, a lot of my concerns with his footwork will probably be gone. But honestly, I can't really say like negatives about the guy. I just think he's very, very good in every aspect of the game. He shows the good hands that you want. He shows the good latches, the good punching. He does get beat at times, but so does everyone. I do think zone blocking is kind of where I'd want him necessarily. Um, but I do trust him on either side of the ball. I think he's got good anchor. Like there's nothing I really dislike about his game. I think if he was able to possibly get more production in college, play another year maybe, I do think he would have a chance to be tackle one in the class.
Yeah. For what it's worth. So he's my 2. He's 79.06 and my 1 is
What?
79.8.
He's
So,
79.07 for me.
wow, that's pretty wild.
How did that even
Uh,
happen?
yeah, maybe my athleticism grade is off by point 0.1 or point oh 0.01, I guess. But yeah, no, I think all of what you said is correct. I think he is very so a lot of people knocked him as not a very good run blocker, but Mississippi State didn't really run. And but
No, yeah.
when they did, he was good. Like I think
There,
you saw that on his film too.
yeah, there's not an abundance of tape of the running game. So that's
Yeah.
I get why people are questioning it. I do. But
But also, I know everyone gets obsessed with highlight plays from offensive linemen, which is people throwing guys around. But what is the league? Like, I would gladly take the best pass blocker and say, yeah, that's the guy I want, and I think that's what he is. I think he's the best pass blocker. I do think some of the footwork stuff is masked by his good anchor because I do think that he might not have the best anchor. He is the second best anchor, in my opinion, of this class. Um, but I think that his anchor allowed him to have a little bit of clunky footwork because where Trevor Penning has a bad recovery, I think Charles Cross has a fantastic recovery where like
Yeah.
you can shove him off and he's going to come back and he's going to re-engage with you. And I like that about him. He's my two, like we said. So, um, all right, let's move into who is your two. I did not know that this is how you landed, by the way. All right, who's your two?
What do you mean?
I didn't think that this would be your order.
Thought
Your
Icky would be
top
one?
three at least. I did, yeah.
I was not. So tell you that. No, Ike Makwanu, however you want to go with it, is my two. I will say, so this first off, he is a point below Evan Neal. However, we don't have Evan Neal athleticism. Um,
This is true.
so I don't know if you ended up changing his athleticism. Maybe that's why he dropped. But yeah, so we have his athleticism. We had it at 10. You dropped to 9.5, so I will as well because that's fair. So now he is zero point 0.7 away from Ike Ekwonu. So if we actually got testing, there is a chance that Ike Ekwonu would be the one. So it's plain and simple. Let's put that out there. However, Evan Neal is a freak athlete. So we'll get to him in a second, though. Ike Ekwonu, great size for a tackle, great athleticism. Actually, a lot better than I thought he would get. But tenacity, God, that's my kind of quirk for him. I think that's where I'm just going to continually point to what is the best trait for him. It's clearly that. I do think he's universally scheme fit, as like he can fit anywhere. Wide zone may be the best, just because of some of his talents, but I think he can play anywhere. But running heavy attacks is where he is going to absolutely thrive with his tenacity and finishing. It's just plain and simple. Those are his best traits, without a doubt. Followed by run blocking, obviously. That's at 9. Um,
Yeah.
I do think he presents a really good anchor, tied for second in the class as well. He shows honestly the best hands of the class to me in all aspects of being a tackle. I think he shows the most consistency and just pure technique. So I do think that's a lot of improved. However, unlike who I have at 1, Evan Neal moved around a dick ton, where Icky didn't necessarily have to do that. He did move around slightly. So I think a little bit less of that for Evan Neal. Maybe that'd be a little bit better. And he's barely better than Evan Neal in that category as well. But where he shines is the running game plan simple. Where he needs a little bit more work for me, I do have his balance and footwork as 7s, and then pass blocking 7.5. It's in the pass blocking, it's balance and footwork is really what's knocking him for me. There's a consistent theme there, obviously.
Yeah.
So I do think he overextends a lot with him and Neil, strangely. So I'm kind of linking them together, unfortunately. Uh, they they at times like forget they're these freak athletes. And I think that's
Yeah.
where there's a lot of overextending for both of them. But we did see, in my opinion, a lot from Evan Neal correcting that this year, and that's why he is one for me.
Yeah, I think he developed immensely at as a pass blocker, but the run blocking is there and it's been there and it's
Oh, yeah, it's the bread
um
and butter. That's
yeah, it's I don't even, Slater and Sewell last year, I don't think they touch him in terms of hi Coda. I don't think they touch him in terms of run blocking. Yeah, she doesn't think so either. Um
or
so
she's disagreeing with you.
Yeah, I guess so. No, I think Slater was a good run blocker, but I don't think he had
I
the juice that Icky has.
Yeah, without looking at the actual grades, I'm not gonna like go against that. But yeah, I think these top 3 for me would be first round grades every year. Obviously, that's what our scale does. I think they'd be first round picks every single season. And I like last year with those 2 really really great tackles. I'm not sure. I am curious to see after this where they end up stacking up. Um, I know Sewell's going to be ahead, plain and simple. but I think Slater would also be ahead of all these as well for me, just personally. I think that's just technique, honestly. Where
Yeah.
these guys all have the size, just need to work out some quirks.
Yeah. For what it's worth, Icky's nickname is going to end up being, if he goes to the Jets, like some people project, he's going to be Baby Becton. They're going to have Becton and they're going to have Baby Becton because that's
He's
the type
baby
of player.
Beckham,
I guess he's a
6'4",
big dude.
320s, baby.
Yeah, I guess so. Get
Was
in there.
Glenn Big Baby Davis over here?
Uh, North Carolina just lost. I'm sad. All right, let's talk about Evan Neal.
Ah,
So Icky is my one, by the way. I didn't even
yeah,
say that. So uh, I didn't talk about him a whole lot, but I if Charles Cross tested as athletically as I thought he would, he'd still be my one because, like I said, I'll take the better pass blocker 10 out of 10 times, and I
yeah.
still probably would.
I believe we had both of them at like 7.5 or 8, and Charles Cross stayed, or at least I did. And Charles Cross stayed there, and Icky went a little bit higher. Neil's just like a freak athlete, and like I said, I think if we actually had testing, maybe he dips down. But seeing the numbers we got from like Penning and Raymond and Lucas, I don't know if he dips down.
Yeah,
He might be
yeah,
a 10.
he might be. You're right.
Evan
Uh,
Neal Evan Neal is 6'6", 350, and he looks 6'6", like 250, 280. I don't
yeah,
understand it. I don't
he's
understand the body.
it doesn't make sense. Like I don't know where he's holding it. It must all
It's
be in his lower body, which is a good
yeah,
thing.
lower midsection, slightly past that. Whatever.
True. So I'll talk about Evan Neal for a second. So Evan Neal's an interesting evaluation because I think he does still have issues where people like he was pegged as the number one overall pick for a long, long time. And then the Jaguars decided to
This close.
tag Cam Robinson. And I think it went back and forth between Neal and Icky. But Evan Neal is one of the more interesting players I've ever watched because he started for Alabama each of his 3 years. First, he was a guard, then he was a right tackle, and then he was a left tackle. So now my argument is that we have three positions where we could say, oh, he can play there. He did that at Alabama. But where I think his best position actually was right tackle. And so I'm
Yep.
not holding that against him, but I think that you're getting a day one starting right tackle. I think if in an ideal world, Miami jumps all over Evan Neal and tosses him at right tackle. To go on the opposite side of Teron Armstead, that's not going to happen. They can't get up that high. But what Evan Neal does really well, um, obviously he's a freak athlete. I think he has a fantastic anchor. I think when you're that big, it's really tough not to have a good anchor, though, for what it's worth. Uh, I think he is fairly tenacious. Like I think that he's got a little bit of mean streak to him. And I do think that we've talked about re-engaging. So when he does lose grip, when he loses grip on people, I think that he does a good job of using his length to get back engaged. Where I worry about Evan Neal though is his hand placement and his technique and run blocking is like not fantastic. I guess that's the best way I would put it. So I think when Evan Neal, as a tackle, at least as a guard, it wasn't so much there. But as a tackle, he leads with his head. He's got these freaking long arms. And for whatever reason, he's just like leaning in with his head and keeping his arms. He's like T Rexing. He's like doing what Jamar Chase did on deep balls as a prospect and why we knocked him for his catch point ability. But I think that he does that far too often for me to say that he's going to be a fantastic run blocker at the next level. That's my biggest concern. That's why he's my 3 over or under the other 2 guys.
So I brought up that issue already with leading with the head.
Mhm.
Honestly, it's fucking hard not to as a lineman. Just offensive and defensive line pretty much just hit each other, headbutt each other every play. Let's just get that out of the way.
Sure.
But it's the same thing I talked about with Icky. That's why I link them both together so much. Is they're fantastic freak athletes that don't trust it half the time.
Right.
Evan Neal gets off balance in the run game. That's it. Icky Aquanu gets off balance in the passing game. I don't
Right.
understand it. but this is the lives we live. This is what we live. Um, they have the same exact issue. It's just somehow in different aspects of the game. And the balance issue comes along with the hand technique and placement as well. The balance really hurts the placement at times. And he basically, why I have hand placement and hand just over in general a little bit better for Ike Kwanu is because he literally gets so off balance that initial punch will just slip off basically,
Yeah,
and that's where he needs to work. I still have him very good graded in all these categories, obviously, because like in the passing game, his hands are perfect almost. Like it's just he gets off balance, and I think it's a lot of connected things. So where um where he needs to just work is just being trusting himself as an athlete. Obviously, we see Evan Neal do like the famous box jump splits and all that. I don't understand how you can do that as an athlete and not trust yourself, fired off the ball at times and become too top heavy and fire out too much like that. He basically needs to not consistently get out like a sprinter. He needs to lead with his hands, not his head, and he
yeah,
will get that with some decent coaching at all. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, he is ultra talented. I do agree. I think naturally the way I see his hands and feet and hips move, he's the right tackle, but he looked more comfortable as a left tackle this year. So it's a really weird dichotomy, and that's why I do think he could play either side very comfortably. Because I do think if he went back to the right side, he'd feel comfortable as well. But I think if he just stays to the left side, the technique and footwork is going to be identical on that side because he's clearly very, very diverse of an athlete and can play both sides, which is an incredible talent.
yeah. All right, that'll do it. So my top five: Ike Ekwonu, Charles Cross, Evan Neal, Trevor Penning, Tyler Smith. Your top five: Evan Neal, Ike Ekwonu, Charles Cross, Trevor Penning, and who did you say?
Bernard Raymond.
Bernard Raymond was your five. Sorry, I have the other sheet pulled up.
Good.
Some guys outside of that I watched that I feel like we should talk about. Sean Ryan, um, another guy very similar to Tyler Smith in that I think best position might be guard, just very raw but strong, strong hands. His grip strength is unreal. I think he's got the size of a tackle. I think he's got the athleticism of a tackle, and so I would try him at tackle. But some developing needed for sure. Do you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, 100%. He got a 7 or 7.5 on every single thing except athleticism because he got an 8.15. So he's a very, very talented guy. I do think he would be better served right now playing guard. But I agree. I was perfectly fine grading him as a tackle because of what you brought up.
Cool. I don't know if you got to this guy, Zach Tom. Did you watch Zach Tom?
No, so I saw you talking about it today, so I did watch like a quick tape of him.
Yeah,
Um, like basically like a half of it. So I
yeah,
did watch all the six angles of it. But
yeah.
he does show some flashes. I get why, and I think the athleticism score is going to again increase people's eyes on the product. And I think it will make up for a lot of things. But he's not there yet for me. Where did he end up for you?
So Zach Tom's a weird eval. So I have him right now as I believe this is a third round pick. 70 sounds like a third rounder. But the problem is he weighs 304 pounds. And I don't know that you can play tackle in the NFL at 304 pounds. And I also don't think that there's a whole lot to his frame that he could add weight. There are rumors that he wants to kick back. He played center for a couple years, I believe, which is why it's so interesting that his tackle film was so clean, like clean, clean. I had to knock him for strength and anchor because I think he stalemates more often than he moves people. He just does not move people whatsoever. But I think if you toss him back to center, I think he could be my center too in this class behind Linderbaum. So good player. I would try him at tackle because I mean he's 6'4". He's got the length. It's just I don't know how impactful in the run game he would be. I think he would be a solid pass blocker there. But
The good thing for him, and this is going to sound like kind of a backhanded compliment, where he's going to go in the draft, he's most likely going to be a backup this year. So
True.
he's going to get to camp, and they're going to move him all around, and they're going to find his true position, basically, or true positions. And I think we will be able to get the best of him that we can get. I do think I agree in what I saw. I saw some strength and anchor concerns, to which I didn't want to force myself to watch two other games because I was like, well, he's not going to be top five. I can already tell. Um, so yeah, I think a move back to interior. I don't know about center necessarily because
Yeah, me
he'd be up
neither.
there with like Landon Dickerson being one of like the bigger centers. But just moving inside a little will help a lot of those like slight concerns I have.
I skipped over Abraham Lucas. I just did talk about him on the Friday Fix. Guy I really like. He's my tackle 6 right now. So um, I think he's a fantastic pass blocker. I think that he does struggle to anchor at times. I think he could add a little bit of functional strength, but good player. Last one I wanted to talk about. So, where did you land on Nicolas Petit Frere?
He is 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 for me. Um,
Okay.
He's above average athlete. I think he has relatively good footwork. He's good in the run game, pretty above average in the passing game. Solid balance. I think there's anchor concerns as well as hand placement and punch concerns. In the running game, I'm not too concerned a lot of the things with him. Um, I think he's got good tenacity and decent finishing. I still don't think he does anything like run blocking is his best trait for me with an 8.
So he played left tackle this year. I think that was the
Yeah,
problem. I think you put him
he's
back at
moved
right
around.
tackle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you because his best film was 2020 when he was at right
Yes.
tackle, and so I think you move him over there, and I would feel more comfortable with it. But I think I have a third, like late third on him. So I think he's got Ohio State on his helmet though. So I think that those offensive linemen traditionally get drafted a little higher. So I think you could see him drafted on day 2.
Quickly, Daniel Falele. We talked about him as well on the Friday Fix. He has a 2.4 RAS. Um,
It's rough.
it, just the only other person we talked about that's closest is Petit Frere with the 6.27. If he had the 4 extra points to get up there, for me, he would be 6
Okay.
for me. Just getting up to a 6.4 athleticism. So everything besides being a plus athlete, I think he does really, really well. He's 6'8", 370. Like he's just not he's not all the way there in his game yet. He's still got some parts to keep growing, but he's a dominant run blocker. So just shout out to him real quick. Uh,
Yeah. One guy, the last guy I watched, so there, I mean, obviously haven't watched every offensive tackle in the class, so there are not, not everyone will be on the lists right now, but Kellen Deesh from Arizona State, I don't even know if I'm saying that right. It feels like I am, but I'm probably not. Uh, I
right.
watched him. So 6th-year senior, 6'7", 301, 9.75 RAS. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. Moves fairly well. He reminds me of Brady Christensen from last year,
Okay.
and who got some playing time and played fairly well for the Panthers when they let him play, and a guy that I was pretty high on in the process. I'm a little lower on Deesh. I think that uh, in when he's run blocking, I don't think that he really knows what he's doing. He kind of runs around with chicken with his head cut, like a chicken with his head cut off. But overall, I think he's a pretty good player. I think he will be taken probably early day 3, and I think that that's a good spot for him.
All right.
All right. Do you have any other tackles you want to talk about?
No, not particularly. I think there's other guys that are relatively good, but I'm sure we'll talk about them down the stretch here.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, that will do it for this episode of The Cut. Remember, the Friday Fix will go on this week, but we kind of mentioned that it won't be a true live stream. It will air at the same time as it normally does, and then it will be uploaded as such on Friday night. Next week, what are we talking edges? Are we finally to the edges?
Yeah, I believe
And
we're
defensive
doing.
line.
I think we said defensive line in general. So we would do
Same
defensive
thing like
line.
today.
Yes.
I'm so excited. The problem is that like I want to talk about 20 edge rushers, so like we're gonna have to cut that one. This one went pretty long too. So, all right. Anything else to add before we get out of here?
No, should be good.
All right. Well, we will be back, like I said, on Friday for Randy Hall. I'm Christian Williams. We'll talk to you next time. Later.